It was supposed to be a quiet night, the kind of night where families sit together. Children sleep peacefully, and the world moves on as usual, but on this particular night, something was about to change. Forever. Radar screens suddenly lit up, across military bases in Israel, in Jordan, in the United States. Operators stared at their screens, blinking, confused, then alarmed, because what they were seeing was not a drill. Hundreds of objects, moving fast, very fast, cutting through the dark sky. Drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, all launched from one direction, Iran. For the first time in modern history, a nation had directly fired upon Israel, not through proxies, not through hidden hands, but openly, boldly, and without apology. The world watched in disbelief. In Washington, phones rang at 3 a.m. In Tel Aviv, sirens screamed across the city. In London, emergency meetings were called. In Moscow and Beijing, leaders watched and waited. Over 300 projectiles filled the sky that night, the largest aerial attack ever launched against Israel in its entire history. People ran to shelters, mothers held their children, soldiers rushed to their positions, and the world held its breath. Military analysts called it unprecedented. Historians called it a turning point. Ordinary people called it terrifying. Because something that had lived in the shadows for decades, the secret war between Iran and Israel, had finally stepped into the light. But here is the question that nobody could answer that night. Was this the end of something, or the beginning? Was Iran sending a message, or was it pulling a trigger? Because in the hours that followed, intelligence agencies discovered something that had been hidden, something that changed everything about how this strike was understood, a secret that neither Iran nor Israel wanted the world to know, and that secret is where this story truly begins. Welcome to Battle Vault TV, the channel where history doesn't just get reported, it gets understood. Now listen carefully. My friend, if you are above 50 years old, you have seen this world change many times. You know how important it is to stay informed, to understand what is really happening. So do what wise people do. Press that subscribe button right now, before you forget. We know how that goes. And tell us in the comments below, from which country are you watching this today? Drop your flag, drop your city. Let the world know you are here, because this story is just getting started. Before the missiles flew, there was a history so deep, so dark, so carefully hidden, that most people never knew it existed. Imagine to nations that have never officially been at war, but have been killing each other for decades. No formal battlefield, no declared conflict, just shadows, silence, and bodies. It started quietly. Iranian nuclear scientists were dying, one by one. A bomb under a car here, a motorcycle gunman there, a mysterious explosion inside a facility. Nobody claimed responsibility, but everyone knew. Israel's fingerprints were everywhere. Then came Stuxnet, a computer virus so sophisticated, so precise, that the world had never seen anything like it. It didn't destroy buildings. It didn't kill soldiers. It simply crept inside Iran's nuclear centrifuges, silently, and made them tear themselves apart from the inside. Iran didn't even realize what was happening until it was too late. Scientists and analysts called it the world's first digital weapon of mass destruction, and it had Iran's nuclear program written as its target. But Iran did not stay silent. They built something far more dangerous than any missile, than any bomb. They built a ring of fire, Hezbollah, in Lebanon, to the north of Israel, Hamas in Gaza, to the south, militias in Syria, to the east, Houthi rebels in Yemen. Watching from the distance, slowly, patiently, Iran surrounded Israel on every side, not with Iranian soldiers, but with loyal armies, funded by Tehran, armed by Tehran, commanded by Tehran, a trap built over 30 years. And Israel watched this happen, and Israel drew its red lines. Cross this line, and we respond. Cross that line, and there will be consequences. But Iran had learned something important about red lines. They exist until someone crosses them, and nothing happens. So they pushed, and pushed, and pushed again, until one morning, a strike happened in Damascus, an Iranian military building destroyed, senior Iranian commanders killed. And this time, Iran made a decision that changed everything. No more shadows, no more proxies, no more hidden hands. This time, Iran would answer directly, but what came next was something even Iran did not fully predict, because when those missiles were launched, a chain of events was set in motion that involved not just nations, but the entire world. And somewhere, inside a quiet room, in a location still unknown to the public, a decision was being made. A decision so consequential, so irreversible, that even the people making it were afraid of what came next. 330 objects in the sky at the same time. Drones, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, all moving, all targeting, all deadly, and standing between them and 8 million people below was a system that the world was about to test for the very first time under real conditions. The Iron Dome, Israel's pride, Israel's shield, a technological marvel that could detect, calculate, and destroy incoming threats midair in seconds. But here is what the brochures never mentioned. It was never designed for this. 300 plus projectiles, simultaneously from multiple directions, at different speeds, at different altitudes. The system had to make thousands of decisions every single second. Which ones to intercept? Which ones would miss on their own? Which ones were decoys? Because Iran had been clever, very clever. They didn't just fire missiles, they fired confusion, slow drones sent first, to exhaust the interceptors, to drain the ammunition, to tire the operators. Then the real weapons followed, fast, low, precise. But Israel was not alone that night. Something extraordinary happened. Something that military historians will study for generations. Jordan opened its airspace, and its own air force shot down Iranian drones over Jordanian territory, an Arab nation defending Israel. Think about that for a moment. American warships in the region fired interceptor missiles from the Mediterranean, from the Red Sea. British jets scrambled, French radar systems activated. Suddenly, what Iran thought would be a direct strike on one nation became a strike against an entire coalition. And when the dust settled, when the sirens went quiet, and the radar screens cleared, the numbers told a story. Approximately 99% of the incoming projectiles were intercepted or missed their targets. Israel stood. But here is where the story gets complicated. Here is where the real tension begins. Because intercepting the missiles was the easy part. The hard part was what came next. What does Israel do now? Strike back and risk full regional war, drawing in Hezbollah, drawing in Iraq, drawing in Yemen, stay quiet, and look weak, inviting the next attack, and the one after that. Every option had a catastrophic consequence. Inside Washington, the phone calls were urgent. Do not escalate, do not escalate, do not escalate. Inside Tel Aviv, the war cabinet sat in silence, staring at maps, staring at options, staring at each other. And inside Moscow and Beijing, a different kind of conversation was happening. Because both nations had watched the strike, both nations had watched the interception, and both nations had learned something deeply valuable about Western defense systems, about American response times, about the gaps, the weaknesses, the limits of the Iron Dome. Information worth more than any intelligence operation they could have planned themselves. But none of that was the most alarming discovery of that night, because buried inside the intelligence reports that crossed the desks of senior officials in at least 3 different countries was a finding so quietly dangerous, so carefully concealed, that the officials who read it were ordered to speak of it to no one. A finding that suggested the strike was never really about what everyone thought it was about. Iran had another target hidden inside the chaos, and that target had nothing to do with Israel. Every war has 2 stories. The one the world sees: explosions, sirens, intercepted missiles, breaking news banners, and then the one the world never hears, the one decided in quiet rooms, by quiet men, with no cameras and no witnesses. This is that story. When the smoke cleared and the world exhaled, something had permanently shifted. Not just in the skies over Israel, not just in the war rooms of Tehran, but in the invisible architecture of global power itself. The Abraham Accords, those carefully negotiated agreements that had brought Arab nations closer to Israel than at any point in modern history, suddenly were trembling. Arab leaders who had quietly supported Israel's defense that night now faced their own populations, angry, emotional, demanding answers. How could you help them? While Gaza burned, the political ground that had taken years to build began to crack slowly, but visibly. And Iran? What did Iran actually gain? On the surface, the strike had failed. 99% intercepted, minimal damage, no strategic target destroyed. But Iran's generals were not disappointed, because the strike was never about damage. It was about demonstration. Iran had shown the world that it could reach Israel directly. With its own hands, it had broken a psychological barrier that had stood for decades. The message sent to every nation watching: we are not afraid. We will not hide. And next time, we will not give a warning. Because here is what most people missed. In the hours before the strike, Iran had quietly informed several countries, including neighbors, of the incoming attack. Some called it responsibility. Some called it caution, but military analysts saw it differently. Iran gave warning, because this round was never meant to win. It was meant to practice, to test response times, to map the interception patterns, to identify the gaps, the blind spots, the seconds of delay between detection and destruction. They were not firing at Israel, they were studying it, and that hidden intelligence finding, the one that officials were ordered never to speak of, it confirmed exactly this. Buried inside the flight patterns of certain drones were surveillance instruments, quietly recording, quietly mapping every radar signal, every interceptor launch position, every response protocol. Iran had turned its own strike into a reconnaissance mission, the most expensive, most elaborate intelligence gathering operation in Middle Eastern history. Israel understood this, America understood this, and both knew the real strike had not happened yet. Oil markets shook, global shipping routes through the Persian Gulf were placed on highest alert. Insurance premiums for cargo ships doubled overnight. In quiet boardrooms across London, New York, Shanghai, investors moved money. Defense stocks rose. Everything else fell. The world economy had felt the tremor of a war that had not even fully started. And then came the question that no leader wanted to answer publicly. What about the nuclear program? Iran's uranium enrichment had reached levels that experts called dangerously close to weapons grade. Israel had always said a nuclear Iran was its absolute red line. And now, after this strike, after this demonstration of reach, after this intelligence harvest, that red line was closer than ever to being crossed. So, where does this leave the world? To nations, locked in a dance that grows more dangerous with every step, a region sitting on a fault line that has been shifting for decades, and a global order that is watching, calculating, and choosing sides very carefully. History has a pattern that most people ignore until it is too late. Every great conflict was once called unlikely. Every catastrophic war was once called preventable. And every single time, somewhere, in a quiet room, a decision was made that the public only learned about years later. The missile strike that shocked the world was not the beginning of the end. It was the end of the beginning. And the next chapter has already been written. In rooms the world cannot see, by hands the world does not know, on a timeline that no one has made public. Yet, this was Battle Vault TV, where history is not just watched, it is understood. If this story made you think, if it made you see the world differently, then you are exactly where you belong. Stay with us, because the next story is already waiting.